a little while now. And the speed of recording is even more important.
Important.
So speed is the new currency of business. How fast can you deliver? We've all, I don't know about all, but you've read Accelerate, or you've seen the Dora statistics showing, deploying multiple times a day, doing your builds multiple times a day, putting stuff out there increases your ability, increases both your quality and your value to users. And that's all well and good, and it's all very IT focused most of the time. And we've moved into the business agility world. And one of the places where um, there needs to be focus, I guess, is actually in the procurement process. It doesn't matter how fast. Most companies need to, particularly government agencies where I tend to work, need to hire the technical expertise, need to hire teams who can deliver software. If I have the best technical team in the world, I have an Amazon two pizza team that can crank stuff out. It doesn't matter if I can't get them started for 6 months or 3 months or a year and a half, depending upon what agency or where you are in the world. Um, Even when you look at commercial space, it is vital to continue to increase and to bring more agility into that procurement space. It's not just a government problem, although it is a significant problem in the government. Go ahead. So there we go. Um, so I'll give a little bit of history, kind of where I'm from, as well as some generalized federal government stuff that has come before. Um, this is part of the, yes, I've done a little bit of work in commercial, but most of it's been focused on government. So I think you'll be able to relate to some of these if you're not in federal, but particularly as we get down, we'll definitely be able to relate more. So I actually worked quite a bit in DHS. I was a Fed at Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is USCIS. DHS is the Department of Homeland Security, for those who are unaware. Um, so I worked at Citizenship and Immigration Services and drove a lot of their agile transformation on the technical side. When I started there, Mark Schwartz, who was the CIO, stuck me on an evaluation team, and we took 5, 6 weeks, something less than the 3 or 4 months that they thought it was going to take us to do evaluations of a written proposal that had come in just as I was getting there. We had 40 proposals of 50 pages each or something about like that. Um, I went to Mark at the end of that and I said, this was painful and ridiculous. And he said, I know, go fix it. I said, oh, um, that wasn't the intent. So I ended up working on a lot of procurements at USCIS, and some of these um, things that are in the evaluation solicitation are things that we changed and that I helped change at starting at CIS, and then that has been expanded out to DHS, partly through the use of the Procurement Innovation Lab at DHS, which took a lot of the stuff that we did, built upon it, and extended it out to the broader DHS. They actually do classes and advise out to the entirety of the federal government at this point. In addition, we did what was called Flash. Um, you can Google a little bit on Flash if you really care. But Flash was flexible agile services for the homeland. We evaluated 111 vendors in. We did demos, which I'll talk about in a second, in about 6 weeks, and then we had the entire evaluation done for that in about a little less than 3 months. For 111 vendors on a multi-billion dollar award, which for size, for everything else, that was pretty fast. You can read about some of I won't talk about the issues there. There's also Air Force Kessel Run, which has been doing some awesome stuff. SAM.gov is actually where you go to find out about procurements that are coming out. They've actually done some innovative stuff and have improved the services that they provide. GSA Perk is also another one where they've done a lot of where they've been working on changing the ways in which they do evaluations in the procurement area. So as I talked about a moment ago, when I first came in, we evaluated a really long written proposal, which was awful. If I wanted to find the best editors and the best writers to hire to come in and help with doing work, then that would have been a great way to do it. We were looking for developers. Last time I checked, most developers are not necessarily great at writing documentation, much less long papers. So we moved away from long written things. We moved to orals. So not just, hey, give us a deck and then tell us about it, but come in, we're going to give you we're going to ask you some questions. You've got an hour in the room, no computer, no phone, so this is what you actually know. And in an hour we're going to come back and you're going to give us what the team has come up with as the answers to our challenges, to our questions. Doing things over video, obviously, but also doing some down selects based on short videos. If you do a 3 to 5 minute video, answer this one question, and we'll go through that and say, hey, yeah, you should probably continue or you should probably not. Much faster to do, much easier to do, and explicitly saying, use your phone. Like, that's the quality of video that we want. We don't want something produced. Code challenges are my personal favorite. Code challenge, my personal favorite type of code challenge is, hey, have a team come in for 4 hours, give them a product owner and a short backlog and see what they can do. And then several other things here, using confidence ratings. If you have anything written, make it really short. 10 pages is the max that we were at for anything written at USCIS, and most of them were more like 5. You have to write something about management, but the risk management plan is a risk management plan is a risk management plan. No one has differentiated themselves in a risk management plan. And then using down select. So do something quick to then provide advice to people to say, yep, it's worthwhile continuing, or it's not worthwhile continuing for your company. Also for us as a commercial, you have a little bit more flexibility in that. And you can say, yeah, no, we're going to go with you 4 to actually continue to the next step, or you 2 to continue to the next step. And then we actually changed our contracts. We made them capability based. We put contract requirements into the contracts rather than system requirements. We had speed partnering days where we would pull companies in that were interested in this solicitation, in this request for proposal, and so that they could meet each other and perhaps create some partnerships where they, instead of having to go find people at random, which is actually proven fairly effective, particularly for some of the small businesses. So that's a quick history, and I've been involved in a bunch of this stuff. Obviously, a bunch of the DHS stuff I'm aware of, minorly involved in the other stuff, but then all of the different types of things that we changed and how we changed them that have now been continuing to grow out across the federal government, and I've even seen some of them in commercial space. I've absolutely driven on all of those. If anyone's going to ask me, because sometimes I get this question, oh, but should an agile contract be firm fixed price or T&M or cost plus or whatever other something someone wants to come up with? I say it doesn't matter. It's a red herring. You can do an agile contract in any of those ways, and they can all be successful and they can all work. It's not where you should have your arguments and have your major discussions.
I have a question.
Please.
Sorry. Yeah. So in the government contracts, I mean, as you know, there's lots of contests once a contract is awarded. But
yes.
You're saying at middle of interview or not, there's a process that after interviewing, let's say 5 companies, you find out 2 of them are not suitable for this project. So wouldn't it cause any legal issues? I mean, I think it's great the way you're doing it, but I'm just asking, did you get any legal issues? Especially big companies are really big on writing. They have the whole departments that are dedicated to writing documents.
They do, and most of those companies have had to change because the way So the requirements in the federal government are, so there are two things. One, I have to treat all the vendors equally. Everyone who is submitting, I have to treat equally. I can't give preference to George at company A versus Mary at company B. I can't say, oh well, you do this thing and you do this thing. Everyone has to get the same question. So like when we did orals, it was based on a challenge. Everyone had the same questions, the same scenarios that they had to answer. It wasn't like I could make them up differently for each group. So I have to treat everyone equally. There is absolutely nothing that says I have to have a written process, that I have to have a written document come in and be part of it. The other piece on the down select, like if I have a short video and there are two different ways of doing a down select, one of which is a hard down select saying, you three will continue. That is protestable. And in the federal government, the protest adds time and is when someone says, hey, that's not fair. Because of X, Y, and Z, I should have made it through. The other is an advisory down select, in which I say we, I'm no longer actually a Fed. So in which the government says, we would advise you not to continue. And we would advise other companies to continue. If you decide to continue anyway, you can. Your probability of success is very low, blah, blah, blah. And 90+% of companies, when given advice saying, hey, you're unlikely to win this, don't invest extra money in that process. Because why would they? An advisory down select is not protestable, which means that the protest can't happen until after the final decision. So in general, there are absolutely, we get lawyers involved early and often. Having the lawyer be part of your procurement team is important. Like not just as oh yeah, go review and make sure that, like, have them be part of it, so that it's one of the reasons why using a confidence rating is better from a legal perspective. If I say you can't do X, then the company can say, oh no, that's wrong. See, I proved that I could do X here. On the other hand, if I say I have low confidence in your ability to execute X, my confidence is my confidence. You can't say, oh no, you have high confidence in that. Like, so you provide yourself a little bit more wiggle room and framing from a legal perspective in doing some of those things in specific ways, so that you can never protest proof your RFP in the federal government. The cost of a protest, it is said, it isn't quite true, is a stamp, is 32 cents for a stamp. And the reality is you don't have to mail it anymore. So like, yes, you actually have to write up the protests and hire the lawyers and whatever else, or have them in-house because you're a large company. But most companies, so you do it in such a way that you have the highest probability of success. And the number of protests that actually have something overturned is relatively small, is actually very small.
Oh. Okay, thanks very much. Thanks.
Of course. So I had done all of this stuff, and then I met a guy in Europe, Mirko Kleiner, who created what is called Lean Agile Procurement. And there's actually a company, and I am a certified trainer for them at this point. I think there are 2 or 3 of us in the US who are certified trainers. And he and I have had lots of talks, even as he was creating this, about what procurement should look like or could look like. And I am working on ways of pulling this into the federal government, but I also think that this is mostly used in commercial, and I'm working on pulling it into federal government. But let me walk you through from a interesting and fascinating perspective, Lean Agile Procurement. Go ahead. So one of the things that that I think the government tries to do is they try and use basically an efficient quality delivery, linear execution, assuming all of these things on the right are true in a like it's a commodity, like I can source services as a commodity. Everyone who's involved in any services delivery, software delivery particularly, knows that software is a complex adaptive system. Like, so when you source for complex sourcing things, you should be sourcing the right things. In commodities, you're looking to source the things right. And in my division at USCIS, we actually had all of the software procurements for like software licensing procurements for all of USCIS. And absolutely, we were 100% on the right for that particular type of work. We were drive down licenses are a commodity. Like, and you still have to get 3 quotes. You still have to do all this other stuff. But man, the objective was to make it fast and efficient and get the best deal, the lowest cost on your licenses. On the other hand, for our software teams that were doing development, we wanted to make sure that we had the right people, the right capabilities within those teams in order to adapt, in order to change as we built, measured, and learned in the software development process. So we created, so we're looking at, iterative things. We're looking at short cycles. In the federal government, for those who are in it, you often have a base period and then option periods. Often they are 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. For one of our largest contracts, we did 6 months. And we actually had multiple contractors who all had their own contract, 4 contractors, each on their own contract. Each of those contracts had options for additional teams. And at the end of 6 months, we'd say, we need more of contractor A's teams because they deliver well, or we need less of contractor B's teams because they don't. So we were continuing to look at efficiencies and driving that effectiveness, but we didn't know before we started how that would play out. And we evaluated them based on their collaboration and some other things. So as I'm looking at complex sourcing, I want to build in flexibility. I want to build in iterative things. I'm still looking at reducing time to market. I'm looking at business impact, but how do I know what the business impact will be until it's actually at the business? Classic, yeah. I have multiple examples, but simple example. At USCIS, we did great design work, great involved USDS, the US Digital Services, created a new form process for one of the forms that USCIS does, put it out to the field, and doubled the amount of time that it took to process that form, which was not the intent. So then we sent a dev team out there to work with them to fix it, and within 6 weeks or so, we actually had it down. We had fixed the issues and had it down to taking less time to process. But that ability to quickly react, to send a team out, to do those kinds of changes, building in a like system requirements, you have to build X, Y, and Z, would not have allowed us that flexibility to say, oh yeah, by the way, for the next 6 weeks, which you weren't planning on going out to the field to support, we're going to send an entire team out to the field to support because that's what's most important. So building that flexible structure within your contracts so that you can execute on the important stuff today. Which is why I say build contract requirements in and not system requirements into your contracts. So on the left, we're dealing with lean startup design thinking and high collaboration between the vendor, between the contractor and the government, or the contractor and the company that's using them. Go ahead. Okay, if we're agilists, we've all seen shift left, right? It's one of the ways that we eliminate waste. We increase the time to market. So we want to shift left on our procurement too. I'll talk on how we're going to I'll talk about the business case, the Lean Procurement Canvas in a second. One of the things I want to talk about a little bit on this is the big room event. One of the things that Lean Agile Procurement, and this is the place where I'm most challenged. So if anyone has any ideas, I'm most challenged in the federal government in doing this particular piece. The big room event is having the 3 to 5, whatever, smallish number. So you've done a down select if necessary, or if you're in commercial and just said, yeah, I want you 3 to come in and do this. Okay. But you have a big room event where everyone is in the room together, and you're solving a problem that is an actual mission business problem, and you're working on this Lean Agile Procurement Canvas, Lean Procurement Canvas, collaboratively and together. And this takes days, weeks, depending upon how exactly you're running it, or not weeks, but a week, depending upon how you're running it. But everyone is in the room together. Everyone is sharing ideas and they're creating their own solution, but I will see the solution from person A, but company A and company B will both see the solutions that are being created by each other. And this is a collaboration to determine like who works best with the team who's going to be doing the work on the government or on the procurer's side. Who works best in the with each of these 3 teams? How do their skills play together? How do we elaborate on things? But if I find something with company A that I really need, I'm going to bring it and I'm going to include it. I'm not going to simply say, oh, well, I ended up hiring company B and therefore this doesn't count and I can't think about it. Like that's ridiculous. So bringing in multiple companies in order to do that. One of the ways in which the government kind of has gotten there in some pieces, but it's not really a big room event, is to issue 3-month, hey, we're gonna award to 2 different contractors a proof of concept, but it isn't really a collaborative session. Like this is each of them are doing their thing and man, they're gonna beat the other guy. Yes, you have a little bit of beat the other guy anyway, but the amount of collaboration you're going to get between 2-3 month contracts that are running simultaneously to then get the bigger contract at the end is relatively small. And one of the points here is to actually drive some of that collaboration up to the front. You need, particularly in the government, no one vendor is going to have all of the contracts. They can't. You need to be
So
able to work with other contractors.
I'd love to
Yes.
hear more about this big room event because MaxAgility has participated in multiple RFPs with other companies as well. And we've been big on pushing the collaboration aspect of, well, if we can't fill this need, but that company can, and we know they're bidding and they want on this, why don't we both work together? And we've gotten pushback on that already. How do you facilitate that big room event? And how do you start those conversations between the different contractors?
Magic. Any solution sufficiently advanced is magic, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, you come to agreement that this is what you're going to do. And I know that may sound a little bit weird, but if you start in that place of saying this is how we're going to award this thing, if you don't want to participate, that's fine. But this is what we're doing to award. So you can't spring it on someone when they show up. By the way, you're going to be in this big room with a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. The other is, so that's one piece. The other piece of that is people who are willing to participate in that kind of an event, particularly if you've been moving in this direction, moving in the transparency, the agility, the lean kind of direction, are the people that you want to work with, because they're the people that have the mindset that is about delivering value for your mission as a or delivering business value, as opposed to just I want to do the things that will benefit me. Like there is that collaborative mindset that exists there.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a little bit of self-selection, and convincing IBM or Deloitte to participate in a big room event is probably harder than convincing some others to participate in a big room event. Just that's the way it is. And it might eventually change. But the other piece of that is like, and actually, if you go out and Google Mirko, Mirko, and big room event, there are several videos that he's put out on ones that he's actually done, that you can see it somewhat in process. It's not like everyone sits. I mean, each of the teams is sitting at their own table, and the company representatives are walking around. But I may be sitting at my own table, but everyone is. It's not like I'm hiding. You all have, your board and whatever that everyone can see. Questions are being asked broadly. There are obviously pieces where that you have to go into. You have to have a everyone hears kind of a conversation, but they should be on very specific contractual kinds of how will this piece work, that are truly proprietary, not how are we going to solve your problem. So that's kind of a generalized statement. The other statement is going to be you have to have good facilitators, and I mean actual facilitators, not people who can watch a clock and say, "Oh, time's up,"
Right.
And not people, like good people who facilitate large events are talented people, because it is a skill and it takes work.
Yeah.
So those are kind of some of the quick hits of that big room event.
Awesome.
But yeah, I would.
Thank you for the answer.
Of course. So let's look for a moment at the Lean Procurement Canvas. Yeah. Ooh, the money shot. So the big procurement canvas, and you're like, wow, this is so if you've seen Business Model Canvas, this is a take on it specifically for procurement. We're working it both individually and together. So I'm not gonna walk every single piece, but walk kind of the generalized structure. On the left is your supplier. Your supplier has, what are their capabilities, what's their selling proposition, contribution of the proposed team, the cost structure that they're going to have. So the things that a supplier will come in with that you often see in terms of any RFP, or like, hey, here's what we can do for you, and here's why we're different and why we're better. On the right-hand side, and this is the side that should be filled out before you bring in people, is what you as the customer, the buyer, fill out. What's the timing? So what do we need today? What do we need tomorrow? Yeah, there's this thing, but we really don't need it until who knows when. Or there is there's a conference in 6 weeks that we need to have a demo that we can actually show people. Like, what is the timing that we are looking at in terms of solving? Is it today? Is it tomorrow? And this isn't like, oh, there's one answer. This is, hey, yeah, here's kind of not a schedule, but hey, here are the things here's the timing of what we have coming up. What are the needs? Hey, this is a good idea. What are the actual needs that we have for solving this, that we need to solve? What are the customer needs, the mission needs? These are not IT needs. These are, what are we actually trying to solve? What are the conditions? Hey, we're in the federal government, and therefore we want a cloud solution, which means it has to be FedRAMPed. There are further conditions based on we're actually handling secret data. There are conditions around. Oh yeah, I have a condition that that we're actually implementing SAP right now, and therefore there's going to need to be an integration with SAP because that is our chosen integration, our chosen implementation. We're halfway through it, but this other thing we need to do, so we need to do that integration. Whatever those conditions are, that are kind of bounding of what the solution can actually be. And then alternatives. How are they solved today? Like, what would happen if you did nothing? Or what are some other ways in which you might solve this? And this is, you're like, wait, yes, absolutely. Put in your existing alternatives. What are the alternatives to actually following through on this procurement and hiring someone to do some work for you? So that you've actually thought through, is this the right thing to do? Across the bottom are people and resources. And in the federal government, we're really good at making sure that we have the people on the left listed in the RFP as key personnel. Like, here are the important people that are going to be on this, going to be delivering. Sorry, in the federal government, you list key personnel in the RFP, and if it takes too long, then you don't get those actual key personnel anyway. Another reason to make the procurement process shorter. I'm like, if I listed someone 6 months ago, they may have left the company. They may be on another contract. They may be something else. So if I can make this process shorter, the key personnel much more likely to actually show up on the contract.
We submitted an RFP 8 months ago, and they just put in a 6-month extension. So I'm like, I don't know if these people will still be looking, a year from when they said they were interested.
Yes. Exactly. So that is your key people and resources, But even if you're doing this in commercial, like, you want to know who are the people that are the best minds that are going to be doing this. But also, oh yeah, that's across it. But also the who. Who on the company side or who on the government side is going to be responsible for what we're doing? How can they help drive and truly be responsible for, because the partner and the company need to have a collaboration relationship, or the contractor and the government need to have a collaborative relationship between this set of people. And if they don't get along, it's going to be a problem. Mm-hmm. Not that I've ever seen that on a contract anywhere. Daily. So, and then you have this pink section in the middle, and you're like, it's a different color. This section is filled out collaboratively. This isn't something that the supplier is going to do, or the customer or company is going to do. This is something we're going to do together. Prioritized and weighted business goals. So based on what the needs are, based on what the capabilities, the selling proposition is here, what really are, as we look through, what are the prioritized business goals? Oh, wait, we want to move this one up because based on the capabilities here, it will actually be really short to accomplish. So we know what its value is, but its value is only half of that. Like, it's going to deliver me $1 million. Great. It'll take you 10 years. That's not really as valuable as I thought it was. It's going to be deliver me $1 million in 3 months. Oh, that's a lot better. So this is why this has to be that collaboration. Kind of like, I don't know, when you take a user story and what's the prioritization of a user story? Wait, you can't just do that in isolation as either the product owner or the technical team. You need to collaborate to figure out, based on how long it's going to take, what is the actual thing that we'll put up. So collaborate on what are the true north, the prioritized and weighted business goals. The high level concept. So what is this solution going to look like from a high level conceptually? Like, hey, we're going to have videos. So the example here is YouTube is Flickr for videos, but like, so we're going to have, we're going to create, we're going to create an Airbnb for pop-up restaurants. Yeah, whatever that. Yeah, actually, that might not be a bad. Anyway, no. But like, what are the high-level concept, high-level ways in which you might consider solving this? Don't solve the problem, but the ways in which you can think about and kind of bound the concept for the solution that we're looking for. And then getting some peer feedback. All of the participants, how confident are you that, so end of safe when you do your confidence vote. Let's do the confidence vote here. How confident are we that this is actually something that as a whole across both supplier and customer we can actually do and deliver? So that's kind of a really fast breeze through the Lean Procurement Canvas. And I am compressing a 2-day class on this stuff into about half an hour, which is why there is a lot more depth to this and actually working through it, taking the class. I don't currently have one scheduled. I'm not trying to sell you on my class, don't worry. But that is, that's kind of a high level view of what's in that Lean Procurement Canvas. And this really is then the basis of your contract, because I have all of the pieces of it now. This is what we're going to contract to do.
Love the visual one-pager.
As a visual
representation of
one-pager,
a contract.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I have the lawyer add the legalese around it so that it is, kosher.
Yeah.
And we move forward so that it is valid and defensible in court and whatever other things that we need. But this is my one-pager. This is my contract of what we are agreeing, both as a supplier and as a customer, on what it is that we're going to deliver. Questions? Comments? Do you think it would work? Does anyone think it would work in their company or agency?
You can either raise your hand and talk, or you can post in the chat.
So can you repeat the question, please, Josh?
Sure. Can you go back up one, Sarah?
Yeah.
Having gone through the Lean Procurement Canvas a little bit, do you think that this is something that you could actually, even if you don't do the big room and even if you don't do some of the other stuff, the Lean Procurement Canvas, do you think it's something that would work in your company or organization?
Heather says someplace like IARPA, IARPA. I'm unfamiliar with them.
I'm sorry, I can't find the hand raise function here.
Oh, you're fine. I meant just specifically. I can see you
guys. Coming from a situation where it's a multi-CSP, multi-cloud service provider, contract, large IDIQ, trying to think about how this would work. And I almost feel as though it would work if you went to the group of prime contractors and said, what do you think about going to the government and talking about creating a template like this for their evaluation to get away from the really large RFPs that are not necessary? I think that's probably where you would have to start in my industry. But when it comes to collaboration, I think the only area I see the opportunity for collaboration on this scale would be at IARPA, because they are used to having these shorter sprint type procurements and evaluations of the proof of concept.
Absolutely. I know that, so not at this point, although I want to chat with the guys I know there, but ARPA-H, the healthcare take on DARPA that is just being stood up, I think may have there may be some places where this is valuable for them as well. I personally, so the other thing the place where I'm kind of hoping to drive it, and I've chatted with a bunch of contracting officers about, and they're like, maybe, they're like, I would want to see like a lot more detail, and I'm working with some to get that detail, but actually do an IDIQ with this is the way in which you award tasks, as opposed to the initial IDIQ.
Exactly. I could see this post IDIQ award, right?
Yep.
so definitely I've seen this where an IDIQ is awarded, and then the government actually uses somebody like a Lockheed Martin to kind of run their PMO and do these sorts of down selects in the forms of quad charts, oral presentations, the sort of things like you're saying.
Yeah, and I would want to get it out of another contractor's hands and actually have the government be the other side of that instead of like. I'll also say the other place where is a lot more similar to what you just said with another contractor is that we're actually looking at using this and similar structures for a contract that we just bid. Instead of saying, hey, we're going to go do all the work, we said, hey, we're going to hire the right subs who are predominantly smalls, but not all. And we're going to award task orders that, because it's a single award, but we're going to award our task orders based on performance and based on this kind of a discussion with those. And so it's like guaranteed work share is tiny across everyone. And then there's a large amount of, you can win more work share. It's a very different teaming structure than I've seen before as well. But that is if we win, we'll see how it works. I think it's exciting, but that's just me. I'm a little bit of a contract nerd, a little bit of an IT nerd.
I think you run into difficulties with performance or past performance when you're in the more classified realm, because you really can't,
Yes.
right, provide that. So I think that's a hard evaluation criteria in some instances in the government.
Anybody else think that this could work in your sector or company? I know I think it could work for MaxAgility in the different sectors that we worked in. And like I said, we'd already been very roughly trying to do something similar, but having an actual layout and an actual format would make it a lot easier to implement, I would think. I just think that any organization that wants to secure an RFP would benefit from collaboration, because a lot of people are specialists and they're good at this, but not at everything that RFP needs. And so bringing those together, I think, is a very good idea. And I'm excited to see how we can kind of soften the government to that so that they'd be open to that, because it's so the lines are drawn so strictly oftentimes. And I think
Yes.
it's holding them back, and I think it's holding companies back, and I think it's slowing progress overall. So I'm really excited about all of this. Sorry, Craig, if that was a question for the group, I was not able to hear you. I think it might have been.
I don't think so.
Not a question for the group.
Yeah.
So Sarah, I would say I'm in agreement with you. I would love to see some softening around government procurement, especially not only the speed, but kind of softening the complexity of it. And I think that you know, Simon, if I'm saying your name correctly, hit the nail on the head right at the very beginning when he asked a question about protest. I think a large education campaign to get the government folks who are in charge of the procurement comfortable with you know, the what's on the right hand side would go a long way towards transforming that procurement. I think once you did that, you would get much more participation from industry, because they would know that it was in their best interest to go along the speedy process.
Yes.
Right.
It's one of the things that I found interesting, because I 100% agree with you, but we got the same, like, oh wait, government can't do not just, you know, these big long written proposals. And I'm like, because companies are set up so that they will you know, to write these, like they have proposal shops in a lot of particularly large organizations that are good
Yeah.
at cranking out the written proposal and blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
they're like, you're not going to get participation if you do these code challenges or video or orals or whatever. And
Mm.
we're like, yeah, but it's in our best interest, so we're going to do it. And oddly, companies adapted. And I think that you're right, that same kind of, hey, getting to this point and you know, really kind of that education and that, hey, this kind of a thing works. And part of my work has been, okay, what FAR would specifically prohibit pieces of this? FAR 1 says anything not explicitly prohibited by the FAR is allowed. And therefore, like, and I know that it's a little bit more complex than that, but starting with that, okay, not just the education here, but also and here's the FAR regulations in which this can fall or does fall, and therefore, like, providing that comfort on the government side. And yeah, it's a lot of reading and work in order to kind of map into FAR to say, no, this is perfectly valid and legitimate in order to do it this way.
On the one hand, it kind of makes me think of just conceptually switching from like horse-drawn transportation to cars. Like it's so much faster. And people being like, well, what about the people that take care of the horses? What'll happen to them? It's like, they'll adapt, they'll get new jobs, they'll figure something else out. Like when you're asking, like, what about the whole departments that are here and exist to spend a year on finding a solution? Like, I would just love to see progress not hindered so much by, well, what about the people that support it going this slowly? You know?
I think you could maybe start with, I'm not gonna, I don't have all parts of the FAR memorized, but, you know, from software procurement, right, commercial procurement side, if you tapped into simplified acquisition threshold,
Mhm.
right, that in and of itself gives some protection against protest, right? You know, all protection against protest, and would enable government folks to kind of dabble in the approach with less risk for them.
Yep. No, it's looking at, yeah, I'm looking at all the different pieces that are relevant to figure out a couple of different ways to, and it really is, yeah, find a couple who, using the DHS pill, the Procurement Innovation Lab, using some of those guys to kind of, I'd say using USCIS, but most of the folks who did the stuff that we were doing have since moved on. So using the agencies that they're now with, to take some of that experimentation, who are willing to take a little bit of risk, because once you have evidence of it working once or twice, it's a lot easier to sell it into someone else.
Now, I do notice that we are coming towards the end of our hour together, and
I
wanna be
noticed that too.
sensitive to people's schedules. Did you want to go over the next slide here, Josh?
I don't. Go ahead. Go to the next slide, and I'll say, "Oops."
There we go.
There we go. I'll say yes. Lean procurement. Every leader, sales, procurement, PMs, lawyers, like having the lean procurement canvas in your toolbox is definitely a valuable. So I'm going to stop there because we're almost at time. And then the next slide is anyone who's done a anyone who's done a transformation knows that all of these things, like management buy-in, you got to get the right people together. We're just talking about the right open-minded people, empower the people who are actually doing it. Yes, you got to get you got a source selection officer on board to actually make it go fast. As I said, big group facilitation skills are vital. And that's kind of it for I have one more slide that is, hey, this is how to get a hold of me and other information. But
And I'll send those links out in the email after the meetup is concluded. I'll send a link to the recording as well for those of you who may not have been able to catch the entire hour. And we do have a feedback form. So if you guys could take just a minute or two to fill that out for us, that's really helpful feedback for both our presenters and for our facilitation side of things. So if you can let us know what your thoughts were, that would be fantastic. I posted the link into the chat, or you can scan the QR code here. And then we can go ahead and continue with the Q&A if anybody else has any questions for Josh.
Hi, Josh. This Sai here. Josh, did you mention about you have a class you want to teach that you provide training for this?
There is training for this. I do not currently have a class scheduled. There may be one sometime in the first half of next year. I'm not going to promise anything more than that. If there were, you know, if you're like after this, you're like, I really do want to do this class, and company or agency or whatever like wants to really learn more, great, contact me and we can work something out. But in terms of a public one-off class, I'm hoping for the first half of next year.
Okay, thank you very much, Josh.
I have a quick question, Josh. About evidence, I think somebody mentioned. Do you have access to some evidence that it's reduced the cost of this RFE, IDIQ
Great
for
question.
government and also for
So
companies? Or
I
is it
don't have
important?
evidence for government yet because we haven't. There, I think it's New Zealand and maybe Canada has started experimenting with it, but there's not a significant evidence in the government space yet. There is definitely evidence in the commercial space on reducing time to reducing the time to procure. I don't want to say by definition, but reducing the time to procure is really where this is driving towards. And there's definitely evidence. And if you go out to the Lean Agile Procurement site, which I forgot to put on there, because I am not as.
You can put it in the chat for now, and you can
I
send
will
it
put
to
it
me
in the
later, and
chat.
I'll send it out to everybody too.
Yep.
That's a great question, Salman. And Josh, I know you and I had been talking before in some of our setup calls about how we're talking about moving procurement from like 1 year to like 3 months. Was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So not specifically for LAP, but absolutely for so not specifically for Lean Agile Procurement, but some of the other stuff that I've talked about, absolutely I have. We those who work in government, at CIS, we moved our procurements from the year plus to 3 months. Actually, for some stuff, we actually got it down significantly less than that, but most of them were in that period of time. I talked briefly about Flash. That was the over $1 billion DHS procurement that we basically did in a year. It got the evaluation. I mean, and that included like everything. Like the evaluation time was 4 months.
Wow.
Maybe ish. And it was also it did get canceled. So I don't want to say, oh, Flash was, in my opinion, a great success because we learned a lot. It got canceled because we basically did, Eric Heisen said it best. We did waterfall documentation in agile procurement, and therefore one of the documents got turned in, and then there were changes that were made to it, and therefore we were going to lose a protest. And we said it's better to cancel than to award to people who didn't deserve it. So unlike some procurements where they're like, oh, it's going to be protested, we'll just go ahead and award to those folks too, and we'll reevaluate, and then everyone's on the procurement, and then you didn't really. Eagle 2 at DHS is a great example of you don't really buy yourself anything by going to Eagle 2 other than other than you're compliant with DHS requirements,
Mm.
because so many people are on that anyway, that you still have this huge list of evaluation.
That's the fail fast to me. So did
Mhm.
it was really positive then, because it's agile. One of the things is fail fast. If it
Yeah.
has to
Yes,
fail,
Three or
exactly.
4
fail
months
better.
instead of a year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was going to say, at the
You can
end of
fail 3
Flash,
times in that same amount of time and have your
Um,
success by the end of it.
yeah. In Flash, which I did say, yeah, we did cancel, etc. But every um, every company that was one of the winners of Flash, or would have been one of the awardees of Flash, signed on to a letter that was written to the chief procurement officer of DHS saying, "Thank you, please do this again. We think that everyone learned a lot in doing this, and that you should continue, and please continue to experiment." And those were the people who, like, those were the 12 people, 11, 12 people, 11, 12 companies that would have been definitely stood the most to gain. And they were like, please do this again. It was awesome. So yes, absolutely. We're learning fast, or trying to learn fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is a few minutes after the hour, so I want to formally say thank you to everyone for joining us today. If you'd like to stay on and ask a few more questions of Josh, you are welcome to. I will cap that at 12:15 just to make sure that we're being respectful of his time as well. And if you need to drop, you can go ahead and drop.